The most important thing when you're planting a seedling is to get good soil to root contact. We're here on Belmont Station, on the claypan on Belmont Station, which is about 30 kilometres northwest of Broken Hill. This is where we've done some extensive groundworks and planted 15,000 old man saltbush seedlings with some funding from the Western CMA. When I started planning to do this project, it was about the start of 2009. It was very dry. This was a pretty bad area, but I still believed that it was quite possible to grow these saltbushes even in a drought. Even if the initial establishment, they needed a couple of hand waters to get them going, and then you don't, in this claypan country, you don't need a whole lot of rain to run water. Like 20 points of rain in this area, if it's, you know, in a reasonably quick time period, will run water off the claypan and then give the saltbushes a drink anyway. So it just so happened that after the first rip, we had the 22nd of September massive dust storms which blew a huge amount of topsoil into the rip lines, which gave us extra fines and topsoil in our rows. So that was a bit of a bonus, and then it started raining after that. In sort of February 2010 we had really good opening summer rains. Now we're a bit over 12 months past that 2011, and some of the bushes are 4 foot high, and now they're going to seed. We should have a lot of seed stock fall out of these as well. In terms of the nitty-gritty of actually planting the saltbush in the seedling form, the most important thing is the ground preparation. So depending on your soil type, depends on how much ground preparation you've got to do. In areas like this, there's really solid clay, you need a lot of ground preparation, and I started about 9 months before with the first rip. So I went through with the grader, with rippers on the grader, and ripped a 2 metre wide row, 2 lots of rows and then 20 metre gap. So with rippers probably a foot deep, and then left it a couple of months to get a bit of wind, and there wasn't much rain around at that time, and did a second rip with the graders, but this time instead of having 6 tines, I had about 9 tines on, and got a bit of a finer rip to try and get some fines in the soil, because the most important thing when you're planting a seedling is to get good soil to root contact. If you've got air pockets around the roots of the seedling, the roots will dry out and the seedling will die. So you need the soil flowing fairly freely, and as you can see with the clay, it's sort of in lumps, and it's hard to get good fines going through the clay. So there was 2 rips with the grader, and then I had a set of offset disc ploughs on the tractor and ran that over a couple of times. And the offset disc ploughs helped to mound the soil up a little bit and get those fines breaking the clay up and getting the soil to flow freely. So when the seedling planter went through, the soil would fall in around the roots and get a good soil to root contact. Then following the planting, the other important part was an initial watering. So we had a water cart with a trailer with 3 1,000 litre square pods on it, and just a Honda pump, and drove along just flicking the hose from seedling to seedling and putting on what we estimated was about 2 litres per seedling. And what that did was the water settled the soil and got any air bubbles, like any air pockets, out of the soil, and settled the soil around the seedling root, as well as giving it a bit more water. The actual seedling transplanter we used gave each seedling a shot of 250 mils of water as it was planted, but that extra watering really gives that seedling a good start. Look, I think out of 15,000, if you went around and counted the seedlings that died, you'd probably be flat out finding sort of 300 seedlings that died. So it was a quite high survival rate, probably 98%. That would be due to the good follow-up rains that we had after seeding as well, but I'd estimate that even in a dry time we still would have got away with 90% success rate, because they're just fairly hardy plants. When you order the seedlings, you need to do it 6 months in advance, because they grow them from seed, and the seedlings, although they keep trimming them, they're only this high when you get them. They are 6 months old and they've got a good root structure already formed. So they're 6 months old, these plants, when we put them in the ground. That way then they hit the ground running, and they can start sending their roots out and get a pretty solid plant in a pretty quick time. Along with the earthworks that we did to get the soil preparation ready for the salt bushes to go in, I also did some downstream banks along the rows in areas where water would really sheet off and run away quickly, claypan areas and that sort of thing, just to hold the water up for a little bit longer and let it penetrate down you know, around the saltbush roots, and also just to collect a little bit of silt and hold the water up. Now, water has broken these banks, but simply by holding that water up for a little bit longer and allowing you know, these banks to catch a little bit of seed and a little bit of silt, it's been a bit of a regeneration tool in itself. But the main idea of it was to hold up a little bit of water and let some water soak into where those saltbush seedlings were planted. Here's a pretty good example of some black bluebush that's grown. Now that never would have grown in this area without some sort of earthworks to hold up the water and stop it shedding off this claypan so quickly. Now this bank was a temporary thing for the establishment of the saltbush, but hopefully in the future the saltbush, you know, collecting topsoil and that sort of thing, each row of saltbush will act like that bank in itself, like be its own bank, hold the water up and catch a bit of the silt and topsoil and allow all these other perennial native species to start growing. Down here is some cane grass. Cane grass is a great clay buster for these sort of claypan areas. If you know, this whole claypan gets some cane grass establishment, then it really lets the water penetrate and holds the water up from flowing off the claypan so quickly. The cracks have opened up, and when water comes through here, it hits the bush and follows the roots down to the ground, so you get that moisture, you know, penetrating into the clay because you've got the plant cover on it. You're breaking that seal